Hey everyone, Alex here. You know, sometimes life throws you a curveball and it's not always one you see coming. Sometimes it's disguised as something completely innocent, something you do for family without a second thought. And then it hits you hard. That's what this story is about. It's about a car, a favor, and a secret that almost tore my world apart. Grab a coffee because this one's a ride. The summer heat in our part of Ohio was relentless that year, clinging to everything like a damp blanket. Even at 7 p.m., the air in my garage was thick, heavy with the scent of oil and old tires. I was just finishing up a minor repair on my own beat-up sedan, wiping grease from my hands with a rag, when I heard the familiar rumble of a dying engine pull up my driveway. I didn't even need to look. It was Mark, my younger brother. He swung open the garage door, a lopsided grin on his face, sweat already beading on his forehead despite the setting sun. "Hey, big bro!" Just the man I needed to see. Mark was always like that, charming, a little too casual, and usually he needed something. He leaned against the doorframe, his worn-out baseball cap pushed back, revealing a mop of sandy blonde hair. His eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, seemed a little tired. Or maybe I was just projecting. "What's up, Mark?" I asked, tossing the rag into a bucket. "Don't tell me you broke another window playing street hockey." He chuckled, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Nah, nothing like that. Listen, I got a huge favor to ask." He gestured vaguely towards the driveway. "It's the Mustang." I walked out, wiping my hands on my jeans. There it sat, a 2004 Ford Mustang, a faded red, with more rust spots than a forgotten antique. It was Mark's pride and joy despite its age and the constant mechanical issues. He'd bought it used a few years back, convinced it was a classic in the making. I just saw a money pit. "What about it?" I asked, circling the car. It looked normal, for a 2004 Mustang, that is. A few dings, the usual faded paint. Nothing out of the ordinary. "She's been acting a little sluggish," Mark said, kicking one of the tires. "Think it just needs an oil change. And maybe a quick checkup, fluids, tire pressure, the works." He paused, then added, "But man, I'm swamped with work. My boss has me on these crazy shifts, no time to breathe. Could you take it in for me? I'd owe you big." I sighed. "Mark, you know I'm busy too. Why can't you just take it yourself on your day off?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely stressed. I know, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. But I'm really trying to impress the guys at the new job, Can't be missing shifts for car stuff. Plus, you're always so good with this kind of thing. You know the good mechanics, the ones who won't rip me off. He was laying it on thick, but I knew he was trying to make a good impression at his new construction gig. He'd been bouncing between jobs for a while, and this one seemed promising. And despite his occasional irresponsibility, he was still my brother. We'd always looked out for each other ever since we were kids. "All right, fine," I conceded, reaching for the keys he was dangling. "But you owe me, and I mean a real favor, not just a thanks, bro, and disappear for a month." He grinned, a genuine one this time. "Deal! You're the best, Alex. Seriously, you're a lifesaver." He tossed me the keys. They felt heavier than usual in my palm, cold metal against my skin. "Just needs an oil change," he repeated almost as an afterthought, before turning and jogging back to his own beat-up pickup truck parked down the street. He waved, then sped off, leaving me standing there with the Mustang keys. I walked around the car one more time just to get a feel for it. The driver's side front fender seemed a little off. A slight misalignment, almost imperceptible unless you were really looking for it, and a faint, almost invisible scuff mark near the headlight. I ran my finger over it. It felt like dried mud, or maybe something else, something gritty. I shrugged it off. Probably just a fender bender he hadn't mentioned, or a parking lot scrape. It was an old car after all. These things happen. The next morning I drove the Mustang to my usual mechanic, Sal's auto shop, a no-frills place a few miles away. Sal, a burly man with grease permanently etched into his hands, gave me a knowing nod. "Another one of Mark's projects, huh, Alex?" he grunted, peering under the hood. "Kid needs to learn some basic maintenance." I just smiled weakly. "Just an oil change, Sal, and a quick once-over." He promised to have it ready by late afternoon. I walked back home enjoying the cooler morning air before the heat truly kicked in. The rest of the day was uneventful. I worked on some freelance coding projects in my home office, ate a quick lunch, and tried to ignore the nagging feeling that something about Mark's visit had been off. It was just a feeling, nothing concrete. Around 4 p.m. Sal called. Your brother's Mustang is ready, Alex. Oil change done, fluids topped. Didn't see anything major, just the usual wear and tear for a car that age. He paused. Though, I did notice a fresh scratch on the passenger side, down low, near the wheel well. Looks like it scraped something pretty hard. Maybe a curb? Oh yeah, he probably just clipped something, I said, trying to sound nonchalant. Thanks, Sal, I'll be over to pick it up in a bit. I walked back to Sal's, paid the bill, and drove the Mustang back to my place. I parked it in my driveway, right where Mark had left it. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. I looked at the car again. The scratch Sal mentioned was indeed there, a long ugly gouge that hadn't been there when Mark dropped it off. It looked fresh, almost raw against the faded red paint. And it wasn't just a scratch. There was a small, almost imperceptible dent above it. My stomach tightened. Mark hadn't mentioned any new damage. I tried to shake off the unease. Maybe he just didn't notice it, or it happened on the way to my place. He was always a bit oblivious. I went inside, made myself a quick dinner, and settled down to watch some TV. The evening news was on, talking about a local charity drive. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I picked it up without looking, expecting it to be my mum, asking about dinner plans. Hello? Is this Alex Carter? A calm, authoritative voice asked. Yes, speaking. This is Officer Jenkins from the Northwood Police Department. We're calling about a vehicle registered to a Mark Carter, a 2004 red Ford Mustang, license plate number JKL789. My heart hammered against my ribs. JKL789. That was the plate number on Mark's car, the one sitting in my driveway right now. Yes, I managed, my voice suddenly dry. That's my brother's car. Why are you calling? There was a brief pause on the other end, a pause that stretched into an eternity. The officer's voice, when it came back, was still calm, but it carried an edge of seriousness that sent a chill down my spine despite the oppressive heat. Mr. Carter, we have reason to believe that vehicle was involved in a hit-and-run incident last night, around 11 p.m. in Northwood. There was a pedestrian involved. We'd like to ask you some questions about its whereabouts and who was driving it. The words hit me like a physical blow. Hit and run. Northwood. 3 towns over. My brother's car. My brother's car, which was now in my driveway, with a fresh, ugly scrape on the passenger side. My mind reeled. I looked out the window, past the fading light, at the silhouette of the Mustang. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was evidence, and I was holding the keys. That's when it hit me. That innocent favor, it wasn't innocent at all. It was a setup. And suddenly my brother's silence. It wasn't an option anymore. If you're feeling the tension building, trust me, it only gets worse from here. If you're finding this story compelling, please, take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets me know these raw, real stories resonate with you. The phone felt like a block of ice in my hand, even as sweat trickled down my temples. Officer Jenkins had been polite, but firm. He explained that a witness had seen a red Mustang matching the description, fleeing the scene of an accident involving a pedestrian on Elm Street in Northwood. They had a partial plate, enough to trace it back to Mark. They wanted to know where the car was, and if Mark was available for questioning. I mumbled something about not knowing the full details, that Mark had just left the car with me for an oil change. They said they'd be in touch. As soon as I hung up, my fingers, trembling, dialed Mark's number. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't like Mark. He usually picked up, especially if he thought I was calling about something important. I paced my living room, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the only sound breaking the suffocating silence. The image of that scraped fender, the slight dent, flashed in my mind. It wasn't just a curb. It couldn't be. Finally, on the 5th try, he picked up. His voice was groggy, like he'd just woken up. Yo, Alex, everything all right? You're blowing up my phone. All right. Mark, the police just called me, I practically shouted, my voice cracking with a mixture of fear and anger. They're asking about your Mustang, a hit and run in Northwood last night. What the hell did you do? There was a beat of silence on the other end. A long, agonizing silence that spoke volumes. It wasn't the silence of confusion or surprise. It was the silence of someone caught. What are you talking about? Mark finally said, his voice now devoid of its earlier grogginess, replaced by a flat, controlled tone. A hit and run, my car, that's insane. Don't play dumb with me, Mark, I retorted, my voice rising. They said it was your car, a red 2004 Mustang, license JKL789, and you left it with me for an oil change right after it happened. The passenger side is scraped up, Mark. What happened last night? Another silence. This one was even heavier, more chilling. I could almost hear him breathing, calculating. Look, Alex, he finally said, his voice dropping, almost a whisper. I don't know what they're talking about. I was home last night, all night. Maybe someone took my car. Or it's a mistake. You know how these things are. A mistake? I scoffed, disbelief warring with a sickening dread. Mark, you gave me the keys. You asked me to take it in, and now the police are calling me. What exactly happened on Elm Street in Northwood? Nothing, he snapped, a flicker of anger in his voice. I told you I was home. Look, just tell them you don't know anything. Tell them you haven't seen me. Tell them whatever you need to. Just don't drag me into this. Don't drag you into this, I repeated, my voice incredulous. Mark, your car is sitting in my driveway and the police think it was involved in a serious accident. They're going to come here. What am I supposed to say? Just say you don't know anything about it, Alex, he pleaded, his voice now laced with desperation. Please, I'm telling you it's a mistake, I swear. Just cover for me for a little while. I'll figure it out. I promise. Cover for you. My mind raced. Was he asking me to lie to the police, to become an accessory? The thought made my stomach churn. Mark, someone was hurt. A pedestrian. I know, he said, his voice cracking slightly. It's complicated. Just trust me on this. I'll explain everything later. Just don't say anything to them, please, Alex. You're my brother. The line went dead. He had hung up, just like that, leaving me alone with the weight of his silence, the implications of his plea, and the damning evidence sitting in my driveway. I walked outside, the oppressive summer night air doing little to cool my rising panic. I needed to see the car again, really see it. I grabbed a flashlight from the garage. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows, making everything feel ominous. I knelt beside the passenger side, shining the beam along the lower panel. The scrape Sal mentioned was more than a scratch. It was a deep gouge, consistent with hitting something solid at speed. And above it, near the wheel well, was that subtle dent. But as I moved the light, I saw something else. Something small, almost microscopic, embedded in the paint, just above the dent. It was a tiny, dark fleck. I leaned closer, my breath catching in my throat. It looked like dried blood, just a tiny, dark smudge, but unmistakable. And then, a few inches away, stuck in a crevice where the fender met the bumper, was a small, irregular piece of plastic. It was dark, a dull grey, and looked like it had broken off something. A piece of a headlight? A reflector? My hands started to shake. This wasn't just a fender bender. This wasn't a mistake. This was real, and Mark knew it. He had lied to me. He had used me. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My brother, the one I'd always protected, the one I'd bailed out of countless scrapes, had put me in an impossible position. He hadn't just asked for a favor. He'd handed me the evidence of a crime and expected me to bury it. A wave of nausea washed over me. What was I supposed to do? Call the police back and tell them everything? Implicate my own brother? Or do what he asked and become complicit in a hit and run? The thought of lying to the police, of facing charges myself, made my blood run cold. But the thought of turning in Mark, that felt like a betrayal of a different kind, a deep, primal one. The air grew heavy, not just with the summer humidity, but with the weight of this moral dilemma. My mind raced, trying to find an escape route, a third option that didn't exist. There was no easy way out. The choices were stark, and both felt wrong. As I stood there, staring at the damning evidence on the car, a police cruiser slowly drove past my house, its headlights cutting through the darkness. It didn't stop, but it slowed down just enough for me to notice. A shiver ran down my spine. They were watching. They knew. That night, I didn't sleep. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. My brother's silence had become a deafening roar in my head, echoing the truth I now knew. If you're finding yourself on the edge of your seat, wondering what I did next, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me share these raw personal stories that often go untold. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. The next morning, the air was thick with humidity and a sense of impending doom. I hadn't slept a wink. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that tiny fleck of dried blood, the broken plastic, and Mark's pleading, desperate face. The weight of it all was crushing. Around 9 a.m., a dark sedan pulled up my driveway. It wasn't a marked police car, but I knew. Two figures emerged, a man and a woman, both dressed in plain clothes but with an undeniable air of authority. The man, tall with a salt and pepper beard, introduced himself as Detective Miller. The woman, Detective Reyes, was younger, with sharp, observant eyes. "Mr. Carter," Detective Miller began, his voice calm, almost soothing. "We just want to follow up on our call from last night. We understand your brother's vehicle is here." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, it is." "And you mentioned he left it with you for an oil change?" Detective Reyes asked, her gaze unwavering. "That's right," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He dropped it off yesterday morning. Said he was too busy to take it himself." "Did he mention anything about being in Northwood the night before?" Miller asked, his eyes subtly flicking towards the Mustang. I hesitated. This was it, the moment of truth. My brother's plea echoed in my mind. "Just cover for me, please." But then I thought of the pedestrian, potentially seriously injured, lying on a street in Northwood, and the thought of that tiny bloodstain on the car. "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "He didn't mention anything about Northwood, or an accident." Miller nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Carter, we have a witness who saw a red 2004 Mustang fleeing the scene. We also have some debris left behind that matches parts from that make and model, and we've confirmed the license plate." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "We believe your brother, Mark Carter, was the driver." My stomach clenched. I don't know anything about that," I repeated, the lie feeling like ash in my mouth. "He just asked me to take it for an oil change." Detective Reyes stepped forward, her voice softer but no less direct. "Mr. Carter, a young woman, a college student named Chloe Davies, was struck. She's in critical condition at St. Jude's Hospital. She has a fractured skull and multiple broken bones. Her family is devastated." The words hit me like a physical blow. Chloe Davies, a college student, critical condition. It wasn't just an abstract pedestrian anymore. It was a person with a name, a family, a future that might have been shattered. The image of the dried blood on the car flashed in my mind, now connected to a real, suffering human being. "We understand you might be in a difficult position," Miller continued, his voice still calm, "but obstructing an investigation or withholding information can have serious consequences. We're not here to accuse you, Mr. Carter. We're here to find out what happened and bring justice to Chloe Davies and her family." They asked if they could examine the car. I knew I couldn't refuse. I stood by, my hands shoved deep into my pockets, as they meticulously went over the Mustang, taking photos, marking areas, eventually bagging the small piece of plastic I had found. They noticed the fresh scrape, the dent, and I saw Miller's eyes linger on the spot where I'd seen the bloodstain, though he didn't point it out. After about 20 minutes, they finished. "We'd like to take the vehicle in for a more thorough forensic examination," Miller stated. "Is that all right, Mr. Carter?" I swallowed hard. "Yes," I managed. "Yes, of course." As they arranged for a tow truck, I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. The car, the evidence would be out of my driveway. But the problem, the moral dilemma, was still very much mine. Later that afternoon, after the Mustang had been towed away, I called my best friend Chris. He's a mechanic himself, a straight shooter, and I knew I needed to talk to someone who wasn't emotionally invested in my family. "Dude, you won't believe what's going on," I started, my voice strained. I told him everything. Mark dropping off the car, the police call, the discovery of the damage, Mark's desperate plea. Chris listened patiently, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a somber silence. When I finished, he sighed. "Alex, this is bad, really bad. You know Mark, he gets into trouble but a hit and run and leaving you holding the bag." "I know," I said, running a hand through my hair. "He basically asked me to lie for him, to become an accomplice." "You can't do that, man," Chris said, his voice firm. "You just can't. Think about that girl, Chloe Davies. Think about her family, and think about yourself. If you lie for him and they find out, you're in deep trouble. They'll know you knew. You'll lose everything." "But he's my brother," I whispered, the words tasting bitter. How do I turn in my own brother? "How do you live with yourself if you don't?" Chris countered, his voice softening slightly. "Look, I get it. Family's important. But there's a line, Alex. And Mark crossed it. Big time. He put you in this position, not the other way around." His words resonated. "He put you in this position." It was true. Mark's recklessness, his selfishness, had landed me in this nightmare. He hadn't just endangered someone on the road. He had endangered me, his own brother, by making me complicit. That evening, Mark called again. He sounded agitated, almost frantic. "Alex, did the cops come by? What did you tell them? Did you stick to the story?" "They took the car, Mark," I said, my voice flat. "For forensic examination." There was a gasp on the other end. "They what, damn it, Alex? You shouldn't have let them." "What was I supposed to do, Mark? Fight them off? They're the police, and they know. They know it was your car. They know about Chloe Davies." "Chloe Davies?" he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Who's that?" "The girl you hit, Mark." I exploded, unable to hold back my anger any longer. "The college student. She's in critical condition because of you, and you just drove away. How could you do that?" Silence again, but this time it was different. It wasn't a calculating silence. It was a hollow, defeated one. I panicked, Alex," he finally choked out, his voice raw. "It was dark. I didn't see her until it was too late. And then I just freaked out. I didn't know what to do. I swear I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Panicked?" I scoffed, tears pricking my eyes. "So you left her there? To die? And then you came to me, your brother, and tried to make me cover for you? Do you have any idea what you've done, Mark? To her, to me, to Mom and Dad?" He started to sob on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry, Alex. I'm so sorry. I messed up. I messed up everything." His tears didn't move me as much as they would have before. The image of Chloe Davies, the broken bones, the fractured skull, was seared into my mind. My brother's remorse felt too little, too late. I took a deep breath. The decision, agonizing as it was, had been made. There was no going back. "Mark," I said, my voice firm, "you need to turn yourself in. You need to tell them what happened." He stopped crying. "What? No, I can't. They'll throw me in jail." "You think they won't if they find you anyway?" I countered. "It's already too late for that. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about that girl. It's about doing the right thing. And it's about me not going down with you." That conversation was the hardest of my life. It felt like tearing a part of myself away. But I knew deep down it was the only path forward. The truth, no matter how painful, had to come out. If you're still with me, still feeling the weight of this story, please consider sharing this video with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It means the world to me. The air on Tuesday morning was unseasonably cool, a crisp breeze blowing through the trees, carrying the scent of damp earth after a brief overnight shower. It felt like the world was taking a deep, cleansing breath, even as my own felt constricted. After my conversation with Mark, I knew what I had to do. The moral line had been drawn, and I couldn't cross it. I called Detective Miller. My voice was shaky but clear. "Detective, this is Alex Carter about my brother's car and the incident in Northwood. I need to tell you some things." He listened patiently, not interrupting as I recounted Mark's visit, his casual request for the oil change, his evasiveness, and finally, his confession over the phone. I explained about the subtle damage I'd noticed, the piece of plastic, the tiny fleck of what I suspected was blood. I didn't try to protect Mark, nor did I try to condemn him beyond the facts. I just laid out the truth as I knew it. When I finished, there was a long silence on Miller's end. "Mr. Carter," he finally said, his voice softer than before, "I appreciate your honesty. This can't have been easy." "No," I replied, a bitter laugh escaping me. "It wasn't. We'll be following up on this immediately," he said. "We'll need a formal statement from you. Can you come down to the station this afternoon?" "Yes," I agreed, feeling a strange mix of dread and relief. The first step was taken. Later that day at the police station, the fluorescent lights hummed, casting a cold glow on the interrogation room. I recounted the story again, this time to a stenographer. It felt surreal, like I was watching a movie of my own life. Detective Miller and Reyes were there, their faces serious. I signed the statement, my hand surprisingly steady. As I was leaving, Miller stopped me. "Mr. Carter, your brother, Mark, turned himself in about an hour ago. He confessed." My breath hitched. "He did?" "Yes," Miller confirmed. "Your call, and what you told us, certainly helped. It seems he finally understood the gravity of the situation. He's being processed now." A wave of complex emotions washed over me. Relief that he had done the right thing, sadness for what he was facing, and a profound sense of loss for the brother I thought I knew. The news spread through our family like wildfire. My parents, Sarah and Robert, were devastated. My mom called me, her voice thick with tears. "Alex, how could you? Your own brother." "Mom, he hit someone and left them for dead," I argued, my own voice rising. He tried to make me cover for him. What was I supposed to do, lie to the police, go to jail for him? He's your brother, she sobbed. Family protects family. Not when protecting means enabling a crime, Mom, I said, my voice breaking. Not when it means destroying my own life and letting an innocent person suffer without justice. He made his choice, Mom. I had to make mine. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me. My dad called later, his voice calmer but filled with a deep disappointment. He didn't yell, but his quiet disapproval stung more than my mom's anger. Son, I understand you were in a tough spot, but Mark, he's going through enough right now. This is going to tear our family apart. He tore it apart when he drove away from that girl, Dad. I counted the words bitter. He tore it apart when he lied to me and put me in this position. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, family arguments, and a pervasive sense of grief. Mark was charged with felony hit and run. Chloe Davies' condition slowly improved, but she faced a long, arduous recovery, with permanent injuries. Her family released a statement to the local news, expressing their gratitude to the police and to the individual who bravely came forward with information. I knew they were talking about me. That small recognition was a tiny flicker of light in the darkness. I visited Mark in jail once before his trial. The air was stale, the fluorescent lights harsh. He looked smaller, his usual swagger gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed resignation. "Alex," he said, his voice raspy, I really messed up, didn't I?" "Yeah, Mark," I said, my voice flat. "You did. I'm sorry," he whispered, looking down at his hands. "For everything. For putting you through this. For Chloe." I looked at him, my brother, the person I'd shared a lifetime with. The betrayal still stung, the anger still simmered, but beneath it there was a profound sadness. The old Mark, the one I knew, was gone, replaced by this broken version. "I hope you learn from this, Mark," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I really do." His trial was swift. Given his confession and the evidence, he was sentenced to several years in prison. It was a harsh sentence, but a just one. My relationship with my parents remained strained for a long time. They struggled to reconcile their love for Mark with the reality of his actions, and they resented my role in his downfall. It took months, even years, for the ice to thaw, and even now there's a quiet tension, an unspoken rift that may never fully heal. As for me, the experience changed me profoundly. I learned that loyalty has its limits, and that integrity, even when it comes at an unbearable cost, is the only true path. I lost a part of my innocence, a naive belief that family ties could overcome any obstacle. But I also gained a stronger sense of self, a clearer understanding of my own moral compass. I still live in the same house. The empty space in my driveway where the Mustang once sat is a constant reminder. Sometimes, on a quiet evening, I think about Chloe Davies and I hope she's healing, moving forward with her life, and I think about Mark, locked away, facing the consequences of his choices. This wasn't a story with a happy ending, not in the traditional sense, but it was an ending where truth prevailed, where justice, however painful, was served. It was a story about the impossible choices life throws at you, and how sometimes the hardest path is the only one that leads to peace. It's been a long road, and honestly, some days, it still feels like I'm walking it. But I wanted to share this with you all because these are the real stories, the messy ones, the ones that force us to look at ourselves and decide who we truly are. If you stuck with me through this entire journey, thank you. Your support means more than you know. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think, please hit that like button, share it with a friend, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories to tell, and I hope you'll be here for them. Until next time, stay safe and always choose wisely.